There we go. Now we are starting to record. Beginning. Do this number. Okay. All right. Thank you everybody for joining me today in person or on Zoom. I appreciate it as always. My name is Daniel Ware. I'm the genealogy librarian here at the Kentucky Historical Society. And today I'm going to be talking about, we'll try to talk about out-of-state ancestors and kind of some of the things that we do have here at the Kentucky Historical Society that may be of help to you. If also going to be talking kind of about just ancestors migrating and kind of different records or things that you might look at that could help you follow that person in their migration. So hopefully between these two, just talking about out-of-state related materials and other materials as well, that'll help you kind of give you an idea of things you can use if your ancestor either, was born, like in Virginia or, Tennessee, and then they ended up coming to Kentucky, or if they were born in Kentucky and then they, they may have traveled out west or, or something like that. So hopefully these things will help you and give you ideas of places and resources you can look at. So kind of some of the things I'm going to touch upon were, mainly like, resources here at KHS and, some other steps you might take as far as, finding your ancestor or keeping up with them if they ended up going out of state or, coming from out of state. And then I also want to kind of give you some ideas of just some, because there's also online resources that you would, potentially be able to use from your own home or go to a library to use and things like that. Okay, so just a kind of quick thing. It's, what if my ancestor wasn't from Kentucky or they moved away? If you're, especially if you're coming here to KHS to research or using our online resources, that's okay. You can use the different types of resources to find potentially where they began, or, ended up where they went to. If you have any ideas of where your ancestor may have been at a given time, I would start looking there. Like if you know that, in 1840, they were in, a particular county or, a particular location, then, if you can find materials or resources that relate to that particular place and time, then try to look for your ancestor there. And also, like I've already mentioned, there are resources here at the Kentucky Historical Society that can help you, including other materials from other states as well. Okay, so some resources here at KHS that I'm going to try to kind of go over and mention are, we do have our other state section, and that's in our open stacks, and it's kind of near where like our Kentucky and county related materials are. There's also family histories. There are surname files. Sometimes you might even be able to find something in some of our the periodicals that we do have. And then we also do have like a Kentucky reference section, and then there's maps and atlases. So the other state, our other state area, mainly it's books that are relating to other states. You may find records relating to specific counties within other states. It's kind of, if you are familiar with our collection, we do have like our Kentucky counties section in our open stacks, and that'll be everything will be alphabetized based on the county. And then within each county, we'll have specific records like censuses or birth records or wills and things like that. And so the same is true for our other states that we've got. We've got, like, you might go to where we have Virginia, and then you look in Virginia and, we'll have the different counties that we've at least gotten from Virginia, and they'll be in alphabetical order. And so you can also like the Kentucky County section, you can potentially find censuses, birth records, church records, tax lists, wills. Sometimes you might find a death record. There are some cemetery books that are there, and also deed books with abstracts. And then sometimes we also do kind of at the start of each state, we do kind of have just more general related, state related materials, like we have some books that are specifically just marriages of some Virginia residents, 1607 to 1800. So I've looked there before when I'm trying to find, people that may have started out in Virginia and then moved to Kentucky. And, if they got married or if their parents got married in Virginia, potentially between, 1607 and 1800, I'll try to look there to see if I can find like a parent or find the person themselves and kind of pinpoint them in what county they may have been in Virginia or, or whatnot. And it's definitely a great place to start when searching for an ancestor that may have migrated to or from Kentucky. And I do use this section a lot when I'm doing research requests for people, especially if they, like I've previously said, if they originated from another state and then eventually settled in Kentucky, just to see if I can find a starting point for them, such as a birth location or something like that, or people that have migrated out west or to other states. Sometimes I try to follow them, to get as much information for the patron that I'm assisting as I can. So this section can be really useful as far as that kind of stuff goes. And I did want to kind of just show some pictures of kind of some examples of what you might find in the section. Like there's some books on like Nebraska, history of York County, Nebraska. There are some states we do have, and the counties we do have, we might potentially have books on like the history of that place. Also something I didn't put on here, you might see, potentially biographical sketches, potentially. So, it doesn't hurt to, especially if you are looking for somebody that was in another state, at some point, you might want to look at some of these. And like here's some more like New Jersey archives and North Carolina Historical Review. So some of the, like their specific like publications might be in these state sections as well. West Virginia history. And then here's on the right side is some Virginia related materials as well. Also, you may want to check family histories because I suggest, besides the surname files, just in general, I do suggest people check these out and look at them anyways, because they can show you where like your family or particular branch of your family came from. I've seen a lot of times, they'll say that, this particular family came from, a certain county in Virginia, and then they settled in a certain county in Kentucky. So it can at least give you names of places to look for in other records. So if if based on a family history, if you see that they came from a certain county in Virginia or Tennessee or North Carolina, you might then decide, okay, let me look in the like North Carolina section and see if we've got anything on that particular county. And it basically can help you learn the details of their migration. It'll, tell you potentially who they traveled with, if it was neighbors or other family. And, you can kind of get an idea of some paths or some directions that they may have went, even if they ended up leaving Kentucky at some point. Let's see. And then here's just a picture kind of the family history section, just to kind of give you show you kind of what it would look like if you came here and took a look. Okay, and then like I previously mentioned, one of the other bigger resources that I do point people to, whether it's somebody they're looking for, a family they're looking for in Kentucky, or even if, you could even look at the surname files, even if it was for somebody out of state or somebody that migrated at some point to or from Kentucky, just because it'll be different information that could be based on like certain families or certain last names. You might find a hidden gem from a correspondent or a document. There could be, list of descendants of a particular person or family. You could find, marriage information. You could find a historical biographical sketch, a family history. You might see mentionings of like that this particular person came from this particular place or this other state, or they ended up traveling somewhere else. So it can, you might find migration patterns such as where the family originated or where they ended up going. And then through surname files, you can locate potential like states or counties or towns or other locations that you could look into as far as other documents go. And then here's basically when you walk into our open stacks area in the back, that would be the picture on your left would be one of the first things you'll see just about. And those are the surname files, and they're alphabetized based on the surnames. And usually each drawer, it'll be a range of, particular names. Like it might be, for example, the right-hand side, that drawer is Gibbs to Gifford. So any kind of surname that would, fall between those two names, we will potentially have in the surname file. And, depending on the family or the surname, we could have one folder, we could have 17 folders. We may unfortunately not have a folder for that particular family, but it's usually a good place to, another good place to start as far as looking for, even if they migrated to or from, another state, you might get some ideas there. And then a lot of times, I don't think a lot of people think about periodicals. I know I don't, unfortunately, sometimes, but there could be, we do have periodicals from different states. And like even a lot of our published materials, there will be articles and, potential information about families that somebody wrote about and sent to whatever the publisher, who made the periodical, and then they'll put it in a particular issue. And so you might learn something about your family and where they came from through these types of periodicals as well. And so it can help you, follow your ancestor who may have migrated to or from Kentucky. And here's just some more pictures just to kind of show you, what you would potentially be looking for if you did come to look at the periodicals that we do have here. On the left-hand picture, that's basically because we've got a section that's strictly related to state-related periodicals, and like the other books that we've got, they're going to be in their own little section based on state, and then the states will be alphabetized. So, if you have an idea of a particular state your ancestor may have been in, and you want to see if there's any kind of article in a periodical written about them, you can go and pinpoint that specific state and go to that section and look and see what kind of periodicals we do have. And then also along our back wall area, we do have more of like a national, like more general genealogy related periodicals as well, like the American Genealogist, that aren't like specifically like tied to a like state necessarily. And so, you could also check places like that because, people are writing all sorts of articles, right, relating to genealogy and family history. And so you may find something there as well. And just here's some more pictures just to kind of show you an idea of what you could be looking for. Okay. And then we do have like a Kentucky kind of reference section when you first walk in. I wanted to point this section out as well. I mean, it's mainly dealing obviously with Kentucky, but we do have books and materials in that section that relate to people migrating from other states to Kentucky, or, things such as like we've got like Virginia and early Kentucky, like landholder index and record books. So if like your ancestor may have came from Virginia and ended up in Kentucky, or in that period where Kentucky, became its own state and left Virginia, you might find information on your ancestor in that time period when, with the whole early land records and things like that. There's also immigration passenger lists. I have pointed people out to those here and there, and they, might help you if you've got somebody, especially in the 1800s, that was coming from, another country over to the United States, and then it might list, where they arrived at, if it was like in New Orleans or somewhere like that, and then they may potentially have eventually, migrated up to Kentucky, or or even if they didn't, information like that can give you location names or states that you can look into as far as where they may have ended up at. And like I previously mentioned, we do have some books relating to migrants from other states, such as Marylanders to Kentucky, 1775 to 1825 by Henry C. Pedden Jr. We do have quite a few copies of those. You also might want to look into, in this section, books relating to the Revolutionary War soldiers in Kentucky, because especially during that time, they obviously were probably a part of like Virginia or, Pennsylvania or, North Carolina, somewhere that's earlier than, Kentucky. But it can give you an idea of, oh, hey, they ended up settling in Kentucky, but they came from Pennsylvania or they came from this other state. And then you can backtrack a little bit and look into these, previous states that they may have been a part of as they were in the Revolutionary War. And then here's just a quick picture to show you kind of what that section looks like, just to give you an idea. And then maps and atlases. Now, as far as here at KHS, more of the maps and atlases are probably going to relate to Kentucky and its counties. We probably do have maps that relate to some other states, but I'm not fully aware of them off the top of my head. But even so, I'm hoping to just provide information like this so you can take that information and apply it to other state related materials. So even if we don't have a particular state map here that would help you with an ancestor that may have lived in another state at some point, if you know that they lived in a particular state, and what you learn about like the maps and atlases we have here, most other institutions, even in other states, will have very similar types of maps and atlases of their respective locations. And so a lot of these can show you where an ancestor may have lived. They could show you a migration path your ancestor may have taken, especially if you can follow them through different years map wise, and you might see them slowly move, or potentially the land around them may have just changed, county lines may have changed. So you have to think about that and kind of keep your eye out for that. You can also potentially see if they had a homestead and they owned a particular homestead, because for example, I think it's Henry County and Shelby County atlas from 1882 that we do have, and I think I've got a picture of it here in a moment. But there's maps and it'll show different districts, and you'll see people's names, and so you can see, oh, this person was living here at this time in 1882. And another thing I like about this particular map, this is why atlas, I like to talk about it a lot, because it's one of the few I've seen here. There's also little pages that have like little charts, and it'll list the people that were living in that district, and it'll give you really, really great information. It'll tell you potentially what their occupation was. It'll tell you like where their location of nativity is. So, it might potentially, if they came from another state, it should say like, oh, nativity was Tennessee or, Pennsylvania or somewhere. So, even things like that, looking at like even like a Kentucky map, if they eventually ended up in Kentucky or started in Kentucky, well, I mean, I guess in this case, if they ended up in Kentucky at some point after being from another state, you might see another state that they were originally from, and then you can follow up by looking at that state and trying to find information on your ancestor that way. Um, and yeah, like, so, and it also talks about, how long they lived in that particular area at that time in that spot. It'll tell how many years. So you kind of get a timeline of, potentially, how long they were in a particular place, while they're, in the middle of migrating. Let's see. Yeah. And here's that's the left side, just a picture of the cover of the Atlas of Henry and Shelby Counties, Kentucky, 1882. And then a picture, unfortunately, with putting pictures on here, I can't usually make them super big, unfortunately, but this is one for Newcastle precinct. And there's names that are dotted all over it. And it'll also, I believe, have like little, like landmarks, I think, as well, and things like that, and might, that kind of thing. So, it can be very useful as far as, if your ancestor did do a lot of migrating, you might be able to find them in a particular place at a particular time, and then, locate more information about where they came from. And yeah, here was kind of like the little chart I was talking about. And so, it'll, list like, if they're from Newcastle, or if they're a farmer, and their nativity was, in this case, Henry County. And then, yeah, because somebody further down towards the bottom of the list, their place that their nativity place was Culpeper County, Virginia. So, if you're looking for that ancestor, then you could potentially then go and look for records from Culpeper County, Virginia. And then, yeah, there'll be like a year of, when that was the year that they arrived at this particular place in like Newcastle. So you'll know how long they've been there. So, like for the person that originated in Virginia, he had been, let's see, I think 1881 might be what it says. So basically, if you're going to try to look for him in Virginia, you'll want to look for him any time before 1881. So that kind of give you some time frames and things like that as well. And then here's just like pictures of kind of some examples of just some of the maps that we also have, or where you can find them. The left hand picture, that is basically when you first walk into our OpenStax area, before you get kind of really, far enough back there to your right. And there's different drawers relating to different maps and things like that. And then the right hand picture is just an example of a map of Scott County. And so just to kind of show you an example of things you might find if you look in the drawer of maps. And then just kind of want to talk about just some other steps that you might want to try to take when, as far as dealing with out-of-state ancestors or ancestors that did a lot of migrating to or from Kentucky. Obviously some of these aren't necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily come here to do, but, these are other ideas you can think about if you needed to find more information, especially if they ended up in another state. You might want to check with the historical societies of that particular state. You could look to, courthouses that were in that county and state that your ancestor, started or ended up in. If you find a county name and, like Culpeper County, Virginia, you might want to try to check out places there. You may also want to contact, a public library that's in that county or state that you're looking in. I mean, some of this information I give to people that are even just looking for stuff here in Kentucky, just because a lot of times, the local, the courthouse or the, historical societies of that county or the public libraries, they might know that area a lot better, and they might have still kept certain records or histories that, you may want to look into. Also, I'm going to kind of mention this in a moment, but you also may want to check online through genealogy databases such as Ancestry or Family Search, or, even check state archives, because they've usually got websites and they've got materials, or they've at least got, information that can help you, point you in the right direction. And then you also might want to just check, records such as censuses, because they can usually potentially include like the birth state of your ancestor to give you a new place or state to search. Like I know some research I've been doing here recently, I've looked at, I believe it was Breathitt County, like 1860, 1870 census. And, the person one of his family members I'm looking at, it states in one census that he was born in Tennessee, and another one he was born in Virginia. So, regardless of which one it is, those are a couple of leads as far as figuring out, potentially where his parents came from, or, trying to find him in that state. Let's see. And in some other ways, some of these, I may have kind of mentioned before, but other ways that you can track migration would be, obviously land records would be great. Also, birth record alternatives, old routes and roads that you might, find on a map or find, relating to a particular place. And then there's also social history that you might want to think about or read about, and, that might help you kind of understand why or how your ancestor may have migrated, or, left the state that they were at and came to Kentucky, or started in Kentucky and left for another state, And so land records, they can help you see what kind of land your ancestor may have owned. They can help you see where your ancestor may have lived or traveled over time. Things like deeds might help pinpoint their location. And they could tell you maybe, if you see like your ancestor at a certain point was selling a lot of land off, that might give you a clue that they were starting to move somewhere. So, looking at these types of records can, kind of help paint you a picture. And also, like, if they ended up moving to another state or another place, and if you can find land records there, then you can, kind of like maps, you can over time follow them and see like a path. It's like, oh, they went from, Mercer County, Kentucky to, like Gibson County, Tennessee, or something, and if you can find land records in both locations and kind of get a time frame and that kind of thing. Okay. And then a lot of these things I'm going to be talking about here, they all kind of, I feel like they kind of intermingle. In some certain cases, I might be repeating myself, but I just want to kind of give some different ideas of things that could help you with, out of state ancestors, or, ancestors that migrated a lot. So some alternatives to like a birth record, because ideally, like when I'm looking, like I'll try to find a birth record or find when an ancestor was born, just because you want to get like an origin point, where they started. So some alternatives could potentially be church records, death records, probate records, cemeteries, sometimes the records there, family Bibles, people would record a lot of, birth records and things like that. Even obituaries, I do try to look in newspaper obituaries quite a bit. Sometimes if I can't find either a death record for an individual or a birth record, because sometimes they might say, oh, they came from this state or this town or this county, or they were born in this place, or, something like that. So sometimes you can get, that kind of information of where they may have came from potentially that way. And so basically, yeah, a lot of these options, they can tell you hopefully potentially what state or location to start looking in your for your ancestor. And so old routes and roads, you want to look at these that are in the areas that your ancestor lived in. You can see where these places, where these paths took them via maps, hopefully, and to get it helps you get a better idea of the paths that your ancestor may have traveled and the places they may have went to if they were migrating to or from Kentucky. And if you're following, especially if they're like, historic paths, or, they can help you kind of get a timetable of when your ancestor was traveling, especially if you know like this path was being used between these years. You might help you pinpoint when they were traveling, and if you know where they went to through these paths, then you can try looking for records and documents that relate to these particular places on the map. And kind of like I was kind of trying to say, it's like if you know your ancestors' arrival dates, you may want to try and compare that to the timeline that those routes were being traveled. You might want to consult histories of those places, even if these particular books don't mention your specific family by name. They can help give clues as to why and from where these settlers arrived. Understanding these roads and paths and routes that people traveled, they can help you understand your ancestor as they migrated to or from Kentucky. You might, kind of going along with the social history that I'm going to talk about, you might get some context, if people were using this path during a certain period for a certain reason, you might know, okay, my ancestor left Kentucky because of this reason, because they traveled this path at this time with particular groups of people. Okay, and in social history, obviously, sometimes we don't necessarily know why an ancestor migrated, why they left Kentucky, why they came to Kentucky. There could be countless reasons for somebody to migrate from one state to another. Did they migrate for, a gold rush? Was it work related? Were they getting a better job somewhere? There's obviously, land grants and the whole land patent process for military services. And there's also non-military grants that were given. Obviously some people migrated or immigrated because of famine, things like that, potentially marriage, people married into families. And, I've seen a lot of times, usually when I'm researching, the husband and wife, like the wife's family may have came from a neighboring county to the county that the husband lived in, and then they might have ended up settling in one of the other counties. So, one or the other migrated to the, opposite county, or, or something like that, or it could just simply be, a lot of people may have left their home state for just a better opportunity. A lot of, especially, certain periods, they were all about, expanding, expansion and things like that. So, some people may have just been like, oh, I can, start off fresh here in this new state and this new territory and, get better opportunities because I'm kind of on the ground floor, or something like that. And so I kind of wanted to briefly talk about kind of the whole land grant thing and how that could help you, potentially finding ancestors that may have lived in another state originally. A lot of ancestors, a lot of people that served in the military, especially during the Revolutionary War, Award 1812, they would get like basically land grants, or they would get be rewarded for their service. And so then they would go through like a whole land patent process that would eventually become a land grant. But also sometimes, some people, there were non-military ones as well, and a lot of times some of the things I've read when looking into this, there would be certain things that they would maybe have to do in order to, I guess, be eligible or to like fully earn that particular plot of land. Sometimes it was like growing, certain, amount of crops by a certain time frame. Basically, I guess, showing that you're maintaining that place. And so, I mean, that could be other ways that people got, particular land grants. And so a lot of times, the land grants, especially around the Revolutionary War period, War of 1812, Kentucky's either not really quite existing yet, or is pretty new as far as being its own state. So, a lot of people may have came from like North Carolina or Virginia or Pennsylvania and then settled in Kentucky. And so, these might be other things you might want to look at to see if, your ancestor, started out in one of these other states and looking at, what kind of land they were potentially granted. And then just kind of a description on like what the grants would usually include. As far as the documentation, it would have like name of the governor or lieutenant governor, the name of the patentee or patent, I'm getting tongue tied. The name of basically the patentee, the type of the warrant being used, the warrant number, the county that it is in, any kind of water courses that are there, meets and bounds description, the date of issuance, the year of the Commonwealth, Virginia or Kentucky, and in the signature of the governor or lieutenant governor on original document, and a note that original grants were decorated with a seal and official signature, are sent to the patentee, and in the land office, in this case, like the Kentucky land office, basically they enter a copy of the grant that's in the land office grant book. And but basically, even sometimes this kind of information can be useful for keeping track of an ancestor, because it at least might tell you that they started in Virginia or one of these earlier states and then ended up in Kentucky, due to being awarded land for their military service or whatnot. And then here's an example of a land grant for a John Sloan. Just wanted to kind of show an example of what you might be looking at if you were looking at a land grant. And this was from the Kentucky Land Office, because they've got a database that you can actually type in certain information and it'll bring up certain different documents from the whole patent process that you can look at for certain individuals. Okay, and then military records, because I was like, well, I probably feel like I should talk about this as well, since mentioning like the land grants awarded for military service. So just military records in general could potentially tell you where an ancestor may have came from. You could also potentially see, certain, depending on the document and the time period, there may be something that mentions, where they were stationed while they were in service. Also depending on, who they were serving for, a particular company or regiment, that might tell you, like a state or a certain location that they may have lived in. And so, people may have moved for military purposes, from Kentucky to another state or from another state to Kentucky. So, this may help, or at very least, it can help you to explain why your ancestor may have migrated to or from Kentucky. You might be, oh, okay, well, they were in the military and they did this, so this is why they ended up here after they got out of the service, or or something. All right, I'm just making sure nobody's got any questions. Another thing you want to look into, especially like if it's dealing with like censuses and other types of records, you may want to check neighbors and other groups that your ancestor may have been associated with or be mentioned near them. Because a lot of times, especially on censuses, these other people, these neighbors could be relatives or, or just other people that were really involved in your ancestors' lives. And they may be people that end up or did migrate with your ancestor to or from Kentucky. And so in this case, if you can't find specifically like your ancestor for a particular, in a particular place and time, but you see other like neighbors that were with your ancestor, before, and you see them here, you can potentially follow like the neighbors or the friends or the other family members and potentially still get an idea of, okay, my ancestor was here, even if you don't, immediately find them in this particular place. Okay, and then kind of going back to like the social history and the other things I've talked about, understanding their reasons can really help you as far as, following the migration of, to or from Kentucky from other states. A lot of times, if you read books about specific historical events, that can give you an idea of like, if you read a book that relates to like the potato famine, in Ireland, you might have a better idea of, and your ancestors immigrated from Ireland around that same time. You may understand, oh, they left because of that famine or something else that was happening. And so, you can kind of get an idea of why they were doing what they were doing. And the kind of the same thing with like looking through family histories, you might get text or information that, or context based on, why they went where they went. And basically just learning this information can help you understand why your ancestor migrated to or from Kentucky. And also it can just help you appreciate, the struggles and hardships that your ancestor may have faced by migrating, to Kentucky from another state, or from Kentucky to another state, and all the issues that probably came out of that. And just some online resources, that you can look into would be like Ancestry, Family Search. There's other genealogy databases and websites, similar. Sometimes you can check, public libraries online to see if they have anything, or local historical societies. There are groups on Facebook or other social media that specialize in genealogy, and people will message these groups, ask questions and things like that. So, these places you can find information or, about your out-of-state ancestors as well. And then here is my contact information in case anybody ever has questions later after, now. Like I said before, my name is Daniel Ware. I'm the genealogy librarian. My email is daniel.ware@ky.gov. My phone number is 502-782-8098. If you have any other questions after today, please contact me. And that's pretty much it. That's my conclusion. Thank you. And here's a couple of references that I did use, and image reference. And I guess we are open for questions. If anybody on Zoom has a question, you can type it into the chat and I'll address it. Oh, and also I do want to remind everybody that we do have a schedule for upcoming genealogy programs. I do them the second Saturday of each month. We do have paper copies of the schedule here at KHS before you walk out the door of the library. And also people on Zoom, we do have the schedule. I think it's in like our genealogy program section on our website. But you can also always contact me and I can provide the schedule to anybody as well. So that's not a problem. All right, any questions? Yes.
Daniel, how does the material that gets into the surname vertical files, how does it get in there? But who determines it, or is that just a staff process? No.
I have a question about the surname files and how that information gets into the surname files. I haven't actually, since I've been here, there hasn't really been a lot of new information put into the surname file. So I'm not 100% familiar with, besides, I know we're talking now about, because we do have like our collections, like committee acquisition group. And I think we're discussing certain policies of, what we would look at if, people do provide us with genealogical information that could go into surname files. And I know, because like right now, we look at certain things like the synopsis and, or not synopsis, but like how it relates to Kentucky and like, condition and things like that. And
well, I was going to ask you, a lot of that's pre-internet, and so sort of before internet became like libraries started wanting things were commonly used or to build up kind of people's ability to do research. So I think one of the reasons things have been added recently is because of the internet, so it makes it available now. So it's really a treasure because it's things that have not
Yeah, I was say, yeah, somebody was saying also a lot of the information we've gathered for the surname files was pre-internet. And so, we don't get quite as much of that now because people can go online a lot of times and look up a lot of this information. But yeah, but we have been recently, like here in the last like couple of months, we've been discussing, like, I think we would basically, if somebody brings by like, genealogy information that they've put together over time, we would look at it and then, we would basically vote on it being accepted or not. But yeah, that would pretty much be how it would be put in. And sometimes when I see certain things, I will, if I'll see a certain document and I'll be like, well, that looks like something that could go into a folder, one of our, research folders. And so depending on kind of what it is, like if it's like articles or if it's something that's been like written up and it's not really in like a full on like book form, I'll try to, it could be something that could be put into like a surname file or or a subject file or a county file. Excuse me. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Anybody on Zoom? If you have a question, you can put it in the chat. Yes.
We're taking pictures of the slides and so forth. Do you make these available online anywhere? Or email them to participants or what have you?
Right. I had a question about the PowerPoint presentation on if it's available online or if I send it out to people. Yes, I do. Usually if people email me and ask me, I'll email it to them. I don't have anything really put online. I know that the presentations as a whole are recorded. And then we eventually, after a certain amount of time, we do put this whole presentation on our YouTube channel. Now, there's a process for that I don't really touch upon, unfortunately. So that the time window for that is kind of out of my hands. But usually people, if they're just like, hey, I would like a copy of the presentation, I just email it straight to you. All you have to do is just contact me. I'm more than happy to. And a lot of times I prefer if people do that because I know sometimes it's kind of hard to see some of the stuff, like if it's like the images or if it's, you're wanting to go back and look at something I may have put on a slide. It's easier if you have your own copy at home that you can kind of just look through. So yeah, that's not a problem. You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, one more, the land grants and then the land records, the deeds.
Yeah.
How do you do that here? What resources from this place do you have available? Where do you start with both our grants?
Okay, so I did have a question about the like land grants and then like the land records and deeds, and if there's somewhere here a particular starting point. Well, the land records just in general, like the deeds and stuff, that's easier, I feel like, to work with as far as here goes, because we actually at least have like the deeds, particular counties and things like that. We'll have them on like microfilm. We've got like the books in our county areas or even the state area, like I was looking just the other day, looking through Virginia and certain counties in Virginia, we've got deed books or at least the abstracts for them. I'm trying to think now the land like grant, like the patent process, that is really more handled with the Kentucky Land Office through the Secretary of State. We do have some, no. Oh my goodness, stuff's want to shut down on me. We do have like some warrants and things like that here, but they're like copies, like they're copies of copies, like they're usable and they can be useful if you're here and you're wanting to look at certain things. Now, the only thing is with a lot of those, you have to already know like the particular like warrant or grant number, because there's no like index, it's just straight into it. But yeah, if you're wanting like the original stuff, or like more of the whole process, the whole land patent process, you would really need to contact the Kentucky Land Office. But we do have some things here that you can, if you have enough information or enough, stuff you can look at. But as far as the other, like just land records, like deeds and things like that, we've got more of that kind of stuff that you can look at here. So it's a lot easier to do that particularly. But yeah,
Same thing with wheels.
asking about wills as well. Yeah, wills, we've got quite a bit of those. On microfilm, we've got them kind of the same with the deeds, and the county area, the state, area with their counties, we've got certain indexes or we've got certain books that have, wills or will abstracts. But yeah. Let me see, I'm trying to think. But yeah, yes.
Went in after the last meeting.
Mhm.
Historical society.
Mhm.
And that was one of my.
Oh,
So I have like a closed stack record. Before.
oh, yeah.
Is there anybody here today that-
Yep. Yes. Had a patron that was asking about materials that are in the closed stacks area. Yes, anybody, we have people at our reference desk, and basically you would fill out, there's like a little like call slip form, and you just basically put like what the name of like the collection is or the item is, and basically then they would go grab it for you in our archival section and then bring it over here, and then we have like a little like special collections area over there that's roped off that you would look at that item there, and as long as there's no like flash photography, you can take pictures of stuff, as well. So nope, we've got people here anytime we're open that can pull stuff like that for you. You're welcome. All right, I guess if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to sign off here, and I do want to thank everybody here in person and everybody here on Zoom who were able to attend. I do appreciate it. And like I said, my next presentation will be the second Saturday in July. I don't remember the exact date, what that day is of the week or what the date is, but it'll be the second Saturday. So I guess I will get off here. We will end this, and thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
July the 8th.
Okay, July the 8th is when it'll be. Okay. All right.